So today we're going to be learning about learning target 6, which says I can assign and label the independent variable and the dependent variable and relate them to the domain and range. So make sure that you have your yellow notes out and be ready to write down everything that I write down. If you don't have them out right now, go ahead and pause this video and take them out. The independent variable is the input of the function. So this is like the x. It's what we plug into the function. In a situation, this would be what you are changing or what can be controlled in the situation. And then the domain is all the possible values of the independent variable. Any values that you could possibly plug into that function. The dependent variable is the output of the function. That's like y, or if we're thinking of function notation, it would be like f of x. And this depends on what the input is, because what you get out depends on what you put in. That's why it's called the dependent variable, because it's what you're putting in that changes it. It depends on what you put in. And then the range is all the possible values of the dependent variable, all the possible things that you could get out. So in this example, the amount of sunlight a plant gets determines how tall it will grow. Well, how tall it will grow depends on how much sunlight the plant gets. If you're going to set up an experiment, you would change the amounts of sunlight a plant gets and then see how tall it will grow in each situation. So the independent variable, what you'll be plugging into the function, is amount of sunlight. That's what you would be changing. And then the height of the plant depends on that. So how tall it grows. That's the dependent variable because it depends on this. If you're looking at a graph or a table, the independent and dependent variables will always be in the following places. The independent variable is always the x. And the dependent variable is always the y-axis. Or the right sideways. There you go. So you always find the independent variable here, and then the dependent variable here. In a table, the x is the independent variable, which is like the first column. That's the independent variable. And then the y is the dependent variable. And that will always be like that. So let's look at this table. We're going to write what the independent variable is, what the dependent variable is, and what the domain and range is for each function. Well, the independent variable is what this first column is talking about, what the x is talking about, which is ounces of water. And the dependent variable is what depends on that, the second column, plant height. I know that because the independent variable is always the first column, and the dependent variable is always the second column. Now the domain is all the values of the independent variable. So this goes with the domain. And when we write a domain or a range of a table, if there's like certain values that are listed, we put that in brackets so we know what those numbers are a part of the domain. So we have, I'm just going to write them in order. 2 is the smallest. I'm going to check by that so I know that I got it. 3 is the next biggest. 8 is the next biggest. 10, 15, 20, and 27. And then close my bracket. Okay? So I listed all of these over here in my bracket. Those are all the values of the independent variable. All the values of the dependent variable is the range. So make my bracket, and I'm just going to list them in order again, so that way if somebody is looking at the domain, it's just a little bit easier to tell. I have 10. It's not wrong if you don't put it in order, but it just kind of looks nicer and it's more organized if it is in order. We have 10, and then 23, and then 31, 42, and then 48, and then 52, and 73. All the values of the y. Okay, that's 73 right there. Okay? So that's how you identify the independent variable, the dependent variable, the domain, and the range in a table. And we make sure to put the domain and the range list of values in these brackets. Turn your page over. Now we have a graph. Well, the independent variable is the x-axis, and because there's no label there, I'm just going to call it x. And the dependent variable is the y-axis, and because there's no label there, I will just call it y. And the domain is all of the x values. Well, I can't really list these in a row because there are a million more, infinite many numbers in between this x value where my graph starts and this x value where my graph ends. There's negative 3, negative 2.9, negative 2.8, negative 2.7, negative 2.75. If you get, 0.01, 0.001, 0.0001, there's infinitely many values in here. So this is just kind of a spread of numbers that we need to identify. So I can't list them all individually, so what I do here is I look for my smallest one, which is negative 3 is my smallest x value that this graph goes to. Okay, still here, if I look at where my pencil is, it still is touching all the way out to x equals negative 3, but then it stops right here when x is negative 3. And it goes up to 2. That's where it stops, over here. And we've spaced them there. And so what the domain is all the x's that are in between negative 3 and 2. And the way that we write that mathematically is we put these symbols in. This means that negative 3 is less than or equal to x, and all the x's are less than or equal to 2. So it's like all the x's are bigger than negative 3, but smaller than 2. Because it eats the bigger thing. So here x is bigger than negative 3, but x is smaller than 2. Okay, so it's basically all the x's in between negative 3 and 2. Now for the y's, my lowest y value going up and down is right down here, right? That's the lowest y value. And the highest y value is up here. So for the range, my lowest one is at negative 2. My highest one is up there when y is 3. And it's all the y's in the middle. That's how we write the range in a graph. It's continuous, which means it's a solid line the whole way. It's not little dots everywhere. It's like just a straight line. It covers every single number in between. So the lowest value of y, the highest value of y, and then everything in between. Really, this is saying that y is bigger than negative 2, but y is smaller than 3. Now let's look at this one. The independent variable is always on the x-axis. That's the time in minutes. The dependent variable is always on the y-axis. Portion of students able to locate suitable materials. And then the domain is all the x's. Remember, domain is talking about all the values of the x that are covered. So as far as the x's go, they pretty much go between 5 and 30. So we're going to say 5 is the smallest, 30 is the biggest, and it's all the x's in between. X is bigger than 5, but x is smaller than 30. The range is all the y's. So the smallest value looks like it's about, here would be 30, so maybe like 28%. And the biggest value is at 100%. And it's all the y's in between is the range, because the dependent variable, the y-axis, helps you find the range of people. Think of it as singing. The range is the lowest you can sing to the highest you can sing. That's a person's range when they sing. For independent variables, here, it's again just the x, there is no label. And the dependent variable is the y. The domain, this time, it's going to keep going out and out and out and out and out and out. Not only is it going up, it's also going out. And it's going to do that for forever. And it's not only going up over here, it's also going out. Whoops. Sorry about that. There we go. So the x is the independent variable. The y is the dependent variable, because there are no labels. And then this graph, not only is it going up forever, it's also going to the right forever. Because as it goes up, it slowly goes out. And over here, as this arrow is going up forever, it's also going to the left forever. Because as it's going up, it's also slowly going out. So this domain actually is every single number. As it goes higher and higher and higher forever, it's going to go out and out and out forever. So I'm just going to say all real numbers. It goes that way forever, and it goes that way forever. Now the range, it's going to go up forever, but it starts right here at 0. It does not go down. It starts at 0, and then it goes up forever. So I'm just going to say all the y values that are bigger than, greater than, or equal to 0. Here's when y is 0, and it's everything bigger than that. All the y values that are bigger than 0, because remember it eats the bigger number. Okay, so we want all the y's that are bigger than 0. All the y's are going to get eaten because they're bigger than 0. And that is how you identify the independent variable, the dependent variable, the domain and range in a graph or in a table.